discussion with you. I'm going to call this meeting to order.
Then we'll do roll call real quick.
Yeah.
Chairperson Sartell, Vice Chairperson Lomar.
Here.
Commissioner Harden, Commissioner McCool,
Here.
Commissioner Malia,
Here.
Commissioner Reese,
Here.
Commissioner Ritchie, Commissioner Stewart,
Here.
Commissioner Wade,
Here.
Attorney Hillary Graham, and Commissioner Stephen Williams here. And we did notice this meeting like a regular. Oh, my mic's not on. Sorry. We did notice this meeting like a regular meeting. So whatever you guys want to do, but we can defer approval of minutes to a different meeting as well. It's not a big deal, and we can handle it however you want. So if you want to kind of recap, or if you want to ask me any questions on paths forward after last night's meeting, we can discuss it generally. Or I don't know. We kind of just held this as a placeholder.
I think we could have like a mini commission meeting where we have an open forum, including yourself, and just try to figure out where we go from here and what's involved. I mean, I have no idea how to start the process, but
Okay.
we have to get consultant, we got to get locations, we got to get some exhibits, we got to.
Well, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, we had talked about getting a, somebody other than a consultant that can run the
open house.
open house
Yeah.
meetings, but actually seeing if we could engage some planning group, somebody who, just works, has done something like what we're talking about, dealing with a busy area that may include an old part of town
Right.
as part of it, and, could come in and just give us insight as to things that are reasonable to go after and change, and, so
Right.
when we head down that road, we have, somebody we can stick with that takes us through the open houses, and if that makes sense. I don't know. That was something we talked about at one of our meetings. So.
Yeah, no, I think we need to kind of define the RFP for this a little bit, more specifically. I guess before we go too far, I think the direction I got today, or the clarification, I guess, is a better way to put it, is that staff can kind of run with trying to get an RFP out there, if that's what you guys want. If you guys want more involvement in that, then maybe what you want to direct me to do is, draft an RFP and then re-edit it at the next meeting and kind of get it ready. But my understanding is basically we're getting, we have $15,000 to run 3 to 5 open houses and kind of get an RFP together to get a consultant on board for that phase. And I started looking into this a little bit today, and you guys are welcome to look into it a little bit more too, as far as how RFPs are drafted. The thing that I haven't seen yet is it be kind of extracted the way we've extracted it. So I think typically RFPs are kind of like holistic. Bring somebody in to run you from, the initial phase of getting community feedback all the way through whatever plan you're trying to propose. So we'll probably just have to pull some things out of, like just that portion out of the RFP, just to get the neighborhood meetings, and then that'll be. And I don't really know how long your standard. If you put it out for 14 days, and then you get a certain amount of responses, and then you guys want to see and review those folks, or if it just all falls on staff to kind of make a decision as to who we're hiring. I think you guys are. I think the direction that I kind of got today, and I haven't had a lot of time to. Got it about 5:30 today. Had a lot of time to go back and forth on it. Was that staff can run with it, but I don't know that this is your guys's project and your recommendation. So I don't know how comfortable you are in just handing that off and coming back to be involved when we have somebody on board, or if you want to be more involved with all of the kind of recruitment, the drafting of the RFP. And the thing you want to balance is I think is time, how quickly you want to get these things done. So, but I also know that, listening to the meeting last night, I think, Trustee Pennington made a, strong point that we want to get it right. So we don't want to rush it to the point where, we're not getting the right person, or we're not getting the right information. So there's that balance that we need to strike. So that's kind of for you guys to provide direction on for that piece of it. And then just to kind of give you an overview of, everything that I understood and from last night's meeting was that basically, a couple of different ideas were bantered around, and I think one of them was, deferring the discussion to the next meeting, and that next meeting's pretty full, so that kind of, didn't go too far. One was, kicking the transportation-related recommendations from McCaslin to the TS Transportation and Safety Committee, and getting that on their agenda and seeing what kind of feedback they provide. So I think that's still, so basically I think that you guys got two avenues to pursue related to the transportation recommendations from McCaslin. One was, go before the Transportation Safety Committee, get it on their agenda, get their feedback, and have them make a recommendation to the board, hopefully consistent with what you guys are proposing to get that forward. The other piece was be involved with the 2018 budget. And so the direction I got today was that we're going to try to get the Transportation Safety Committee has a meeting in September on the 17th. And we're going to try to add your guys' recommendations to their agenda. And we'll follow up with that confirmation. So at least, tentatively have that on your calendars that, for some of you or all of you or whomever of you to attend that meeting and make that recommendation for the Transportation Safety Committee. And I imagine Jim will want to be there as long as he's available.
Can you clarify that date again? Because the 17th is a Sunday.
Maybe he mistyped it.
September.
9/17 is a Sunday?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
got to be it's usually a Monday, so I would guess it's the 18th.
I thought,
Sorry about that.
Well, I heard
Commissioner
September 18th.
Ryan said that it would be midday on a Tuesday or something.
So that's the budget meeting. So
Oh,
the
I'm
budget
sorry.
meeting is
Okay.
on the 26th, and it starts at 1. The clarification I got there is that we have the general fund kind of review doesn't start, so the general fund capital budget is where the roundabout and those type of discussions would occur, and it follows the general fund review of expenses, which generally lasts about an hour. So we don't know how long these things will take. So, you don't necessarily have to get there at 1 because it's going to be the second item on the agenda, and typically the first item takes an hour. Getting there at 1:30 would probably be safe, but if you want to show up at 1, we're just trying to be sensitive to your time. So having somebody or a few people from Planning Commission attend that meeting, which I believe is Tuesday. You have a calendar in front of you?
Yeah.
Is that right? Tuesday the 26th?
Yes.
Okay. Would also be recommended. So those are the kind of the two paths forward is, we have budget for the kind of the more expensive stuff, and I think even some of the kind of mid-range stuff. And I think that from what I understand, the Transportation Safety Committee is also where you kind of want to make a recommendation on the roundabout as well, even though it is kind of the larger budget item. And for some context, I believe that the current budget, for they do like 3, 4, some odd years, has the roundabout in there, but I think that it's not a next year item. So if it's going to be a next year item, that's kind of what the discussion is, and I think it raises to the level of an immediate concern. Basically, probably after Transportation Safety Committee reviews the recommendations, and maybe it gets bumped up a year or 2 years or wherever, maybe it stays wherever it's at. I don't know if it's a 2019 item right now or 2020, but I don't think it's as far down the road as Jim, understood it to be, and Alex kind of perceived it to be when he talked to you guys way back in January. I think it's kind of and maybe it's because of our discussions, but it's got some attention, and it's at least on the budget radar. And I think now, basically after last night's meeting, the larger Northwest area plan is also on that radar. We didn't really get specific feedback, but we also got, so on the most specific feedback, or the most direct feedback I think we got was the approval of the $15,000 to start this process. And I would assume that if we're going to start a process where, we're going to have some legs to run with it, if, and as long as whatever, information we get from the initial, the initial outreach doesn't say, we either aren't in agreement or we don't think anything should be done. You know, if those are either one of those are the two conclusions, maybe it doesn't go forward. But my impression is that, you know, that'll also be on the budget, and that's also something that you guys should advocate for if that's what you want to do at those budget meetings. So kind of the more expensive things are, you know, somewhere between a $60,000 and $100,000 Northwest, full-blown Northwest sub-area plan, and a, you know, $1 million or $1.5 million, you know, dollar roundabout at Indiana and McCaslin. So that's the main things, I guess, to kind of give you the feedback on as far as next step goes. And we'll continue to provide feedback, you know, as far as that goes. So I think the discussion for tonight, you know, it's up to you, but really what you may want to provide direction on is how you want to go about, you know, soliciting somebody for this, these open house meetings and what you want that to look like, or whether or not you want to hand it off to staff, and or, you know, like the other thing that's what I did see, and we can pull a few of them up, I saved a few, is just that like there's kind of a timeline. You know, they have a kickoff meeting where you can bring in these consultants and kind of tell them that this is what we're looking for, you know, just so that there's some clarity, and then have a deadline as far as when you're going to get your submittals in, and then and do a review later. I think staff, you know, I think might be a little bit more nimble and efficient to get that done quicker, but if there's no sense of urgency, or if there's a strong sense of ownership, which I would also understand by Planning Commission if they want to keep this, you know, theirs and not hand it off and then get it handed back to them, we can discuss all that too. So does that make sense? More than you were thinking you'd hear?
That was quite a bit.
I
I was wondering if you were going to take a breath.
I like the idea that the planning commission actually keep control of this. Like you said, handing it off to, excuse me, staff, and then getting it back from staff. I think there might be something missing in that. I don't know, Bob, what would you think?
I'd like to see a mix, but I mean, I'd
you like to see what?
I would like to see a bit of a mix
Mix.
Yeah.
of us with staff. I mean, it just, I mean, our staff is hired to take care of these items, and I think in many of these cases, somebody needs to push it along, and provide guidance from this level. And so I'd like to see us heavily involved. But, you know, do we need to pick, interview, you know, I mean, that could drag out the process if we're not careful, right? So we can figure out a balance where I mean, my first question with the small area plan is, and I'm not suggesting we don't, but is an RFP required? Is it for this expenditure? Is that, I mean, I know you've got that direction, but is that a requirement?
I don't know. I mean, there's probably some protocol as far as the expense that we have. So $15,000 may not merit having to do an RFP. I don't know. But I also don't know how we find the person that we're looking for without kind of putting it out there.
Well, there've been some recommendations I've gotten that I've heard from some town board members, and I thought Lisa had some thoughts on that as well.
I was going to say, I thought Lisa had some contacts in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, if we as a town, somebody within the town has an idea of who would be a good choice for this, or a couple of people or organizations that might be a good choice for this, that might be one approach as well.
Okay.
But I'm not suggesting we don't do an RFP. I'm just, you know, our RFP is, hey, who's out there who wants to do this? Come bid on this, and then we have to make a decision. The other approach, if it's not required, is, you know, we have talented staff and board members who are involved with organizations who do this type of planning, and we ourselves may know organizations that can help us that we may want to solicit from them rather than put it out there for people to bid. I don't know.
If it's going to be kind of open-ended in terms of expense or the size of the money that we're going to end up spending, because 15 is only the downstroke or the startup capital. Do we need would the RFP carry more weight in terms of getting extended funding as opposed to just sort of getting in chunks?
It might, but I think our marching orders now are, we got $15,000 for this specific, expense.
I'm just
so.
curious what the protocol and, how government works kind of, I think we're.
Well, and this first step is to, I absolutely believe we have a problem, and I'm deeply concerned. That's why we're all talking about this.
That's right.
But we want to confirm that we have a problem, and we want to confirm what the problems are. And I think that's what this step is. And where we go from that, I mean, sure, it's possible that we come back and there isn't a problem. I don't expect that, but that's as much of a potential outcome as we have $100,000 worth of problems that we need to plan over the next year, right? So, and I expect that'll fall somewhere in between. That we're going to have businesses that have interests in this area. We're going to have residents who are wanting to make sure this remains a comfortable, livable place, and we have commissioners. I mean, Anthony's interested in senior living, right? I'm interested in traffic, minimizing traffic and separating things. I mean, we have things that we think are going to come out of this.
And is that RTD or whatever that transportation plan that's floating around?
Yeah. So I expect we're going to fall somewhere in the middle, and so I got a little bit nervous last night when Trustee Pennington and Lasis were, getting into, well, we really want to figure out how to do this right, and I'm like, well, I don't know what it is yet, and that's what we were hoping this next step is to figure out what this is. I believe, like I said, it's warranted this activity, but we need to get it defined so we know what it looks like.
Yeah, and I mean, I have the same kind of questions. So I know that we've had discussions in the past as to how much framing we want to do of this, and then are we going to couch it as a visioning exercise, or are we going to couch it as, we want specific feedback? I think this is kind of where we landed on, a handful of questions and a handful of hot button issues. Is does the town feel that our zoning is appropriate, and does the town feel that certain zoning classifications or even our development allowances are appropriate for original town? But then, more broadly, what do we see, or how do we see, the marketplace interacting with Sagamore and original town? And so, I think that before we kick out or get somebody on board, I think they're going to want to know, what they need to get their arms around. Like a consultant needs to have some fairly specific direction as to how we want these meetings. It's not just a complete open house to come give us feedback on. At least that's not how I understood it.
No, I mean, I'd like to see whoever we get involved, which I expect will be businesses and residents heavily from this area, and anybody else who's interested. I'm not sure what interest we'll get from outside the direct community, and provide education about the topics we already know that are out there and the issues that have been raised. And what the zoning looks like, and what possibilities of things that could happen that we things that we've been talking about for the last 3 months, so that they can be brought up to speed. And then, yes, I would expect feedback from them, and also, I know there's some other issues out there that I told my neighbor Ross, I said, to write that down and make sure you keep that on the list and bring it along when we start talking about these things, because that's what we need to hear.
Yeah, so we're getting back to the original issue here, and the original question. I would certainly support and be in support of moving ahead with an RFP for the consultant. And somewhat like you, I would agree. I think it needs to be a hybrid kind of RFP and hiring of the consultant, in that staff is well equipped to handle these RFPs. You do them all the time. You can put those out and get consultants. And in terms of consultants, I think for me, I would personally like to see someone who doesn't have any connection to our town, who doesn't have any issues that are already established in their mind. So I think getting someone fresh, getting a fresh set of eyes on this would be hugely beneficial. So once the RFP is put out by staff, and then that person is hired, then I think that it would make some sense for that person to come in, or those people to come in and interview or be interviewed by Planning Commission, because we've talked about this quite a bit, and I thought that we have some very specific ideas about what we want this person to be doing, how we want to move, how we would like them to move forward.
Yeah, to be able to give them some more specific instructions as to what we've been talking about these items.
Correct.
And I'd like to see us solicit some people to come talk to us too, because I said, like I said, I know there's help out there that we may look at.
Right, and I think, as far as the RFP goes, staff, and especially with Stephen being here for all of our meetings, he's got a good understanding of what we've been discussing, putting together the RFP. Then we can also, Lisa or whoever has recommendations of people who we would like to reach out to and get the RFP to. That would be the process, get the RFP out to them. But also, I think prior to making a selection, maybe they attend one of our meetings as we're discussing the Northwest Small Area Plan, and then kind of give them an in-face, understanding of what we're kind of looking for, and go from that standpoint. But I think
Exactly.
definitely-
That's my understanding, is that when we've talked about this in the past, we've said that we don't want someone to come in and kind of explain to us what we can do in our community. We want someone to come in and listen to what we want and help us develop that piece.
Or our baseline of what we believe that the town wants, and then how do we go from what our ideas are to get it in front of the masses, and then get their ideas, and then take it from there. And
Here's what we're facing. What things have to change? What code needs to change? What does comprehensive plan need to change? If so, what's involved in making those changes? Are they reasonable to do? Are they legal to do? Right? Are there costs involved?
Yeah, and that's where I think it gets a little tricky. Is like, are we doing this piece just to get, neighbor? I mean, if for the $15,000 budget, it's tricky to kind of separate out what you're talking about, which I kind of feel is
That's
the second phase.
yes, agreed.
Like when you get into the Northwest Area Plan, we're going to need a consultant to actually,
Sure.
because I don't know how many hours that is. Like, get your head around.
Yeah, I don't know if that's
Didn't-
50
I didn't
to
get through it in a
100
couple hours, to get your head around the code and and then kind of identify, get familiar with the area, kind of identify what, like our Coal Creek Drive, having, the main access through town and, or being, the secondary access and the traffic issue. I don't know that you just see that. You probably could from looking at a map to some degree, but I think that the first phase is really just, and correct me because this is yours, is just kind of identifying the issues and getting the feedback from people. And,
Just want to make sure we have that. I mean, the person we select, we want to be able to. It's obvious.
it'd be
there are-
easier to
that there are-
transition.
there are
But
a
they might
handful
end
of
up being
things.
two different firms too. I don't know.
It could be.
Yeah,
Right.
so-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It could end up being two different people entirely.
right, because what we're really looking, because for much less than $15,000, we could put together community events where everybody comes in here and kind of, we just throw spitball stuff, but then we just need that consultant is going to be able to take all that information and kind of put it together so it can go into the second phase. That's
Right.
my
Yeah, no.
understanding is that.
That's a good point.
What is the deliverable out of, what are we asking the consultant? Are they giving us a report that just summarizes everything we heard, or what is it? I'm unclear on what we're asking the consultant to deliver to us
I think
out of phase one.
my understanding, one of the main things is just the facilitation of the meeting. So that's key. And that's
Okay.
kind of, bringing people in, organizing it, kind of making sure that they're effective meetings is kind of number one. And then number two is you do need an output. And the output's going to be, this is what we heard, and probably a lot of, pie charts and stuff like that saying that, like 50% thought that we had an issue with, original town zoning, and we probably have 50 or 70% saying at the same time that we love original town and we want to keep it as it is. And so that's the, but those are the things. So, well, what do we recommend or to change, or what do we need to do from your understanding to protect it? Or I'm just trying to focus on original town because it seems like that's kind of the crux of the issue, but I know that it's broader than that. But I imagine it'll be really just like, these are the questions we asked and these are the answers we got, and this is kind of the things that rose to the top type of But if there's something more specific we want out of that, then we need to identify that kind of upfront, so.
Well, the one thing I've said that I want out of this is I want participation by our staff, by our planning commission, by our committees, and by our board. I have an expectation that they would attend these and that they'd be listening to what's going on. So, along with the report is just for the people who are most engaged in the town, our committees, our commissions, our board, are getting a sense of the area and the people and the issues, and not getting a report to read and making decisions on pie charts and graphs. I think that those are great supporting materials, but for me, this
The process is
visioning
important.
process is much more important than the final document that comes out of this, and I think that's what's going to make this successful. Is if we've just all heard these things and we stand up and we're all going to hear different things. We're going to push and fight for different things. We're going to push and pull to try to come to some reasonable decisions on things we can and can't do and what makes sense, and we're all going to pick up on different things and remind each other what we heard and fight to make this area, like we've been saying, a great livable place, that works well for business and residents and all that. So that's,
Well, maybe
I don't know
that's
how
a-
you articulate that outcome, but
Well, maybe that's a second part of the criteria we're trying to establish with this first consultant, is that they have some strategies in order to ensure that it's an effective process, not just, you can arrange some open houses, but so maybe that's some feedback we want to get on whatever application we kind of get out of it, is that, we want strategies for effective and engaged community, and then we also want, data that will actually, that we can have some recommendations on paths forward towards, our eventual goal of how this larger plan kind of, I don't know, is shaped or organized or whatever. So,
yeah, we want data for us to jump on and give us the information we need to push different agendas depending on what everybody's hearing and what everybody thinks is important. So.
And so also, I think to be able to help us, help us in our process and provide us some structure. I think that, whomever we hire for this job needs to have some very specialized skills. They need to be somewhat knowledgeable in community planning, to be able to, listen to what we're saying and help us to structure that in our minds and to help us create that vision. I think they also have to have some knowledge of community facilitation. Once these start, I'm anticipating that there is going to be a lot of passion around what that plan should look like, for that small area plan should look like. And I'm sure there are going to be some very strong opinions about what direction we should go and how it should all look. And that, I think our consultant needs to be able to help us get through those emotions and keep us on track and structured to help us create our vision. That's kind of what I was thinking and what I was hoping for.
And my guess is we're going to identify some number of items that are obvious to the majority, are low-hanging fruit, and we'll go after them and can get them knocked out. And we're going to have a couple more that are big elephants that could be just going to require time to work through. I mean, it took us a year to go through, or a year plus to go through the land use code last time I did it, and not that we'll have to go through the whole thing. I mean, but we might. There's a lot of stuff in there. If we have to address that, that's a big thing, right? That's a big deal. It impacts a lot of people.
So if you were to draft the RFP, would you be able to send it to us for review, or just to glance it over and then get it back, or does that have to come to a meeting? And
It's a good question. It's something I have to check in with, like,
Yeah.
because I think my understanding was that there could be some edits done, and Hillary was a little bit more concerned about. But it's not anything where I think you have your marching orders. We're not doing anything outside the box or making. I mean, the RFP I could go do on my own, you
Right.
know, like, and but if you guys want to see it again, whether or not we, get together on the 5th of September and, review it and tweak it, we could do that. And I think I guess the easiest answer is I could certainly send it out to you guys before that meeting. You guys could review it. We could discuss it at a meeting and make the final edits. Whether or not we can do all that offline is something that would have to follow up on.
Yeah, because I don't think, I mean, for me personally, I don't think that we really need to review it at a meeting. I mean, that's what staff is here to do, RFPs, and get it out the door. I was just wondering about, for time's sake, just be able to email it, we read it and say, yeah, that's great. But if there are restrictions, then we
Okay.
just skip that phase and.
But you'd like to,
Right.
if it's possible. Makes sense.
Yeah,
Is that,
and for me, the RFP is what it is. It's, it's the request. And then
Mhm.
I would feel like I'd want to have more input after that person has been selected, or, at least narrowed down to a couple of prospects.
And if you were to put out an RFP, would you just would you interview people at
Well,
the staff level?
yeah, I mean, I guess that's how it would.
I mean,
it
if
would-
10 people came along, would you?
Right. We might interview, we might just see what the applicants are, and we might figure out, who seems the most experienced, like it may just be 3. I don't know, like, for this level of money, I don't know what we're gonna get.
Yeah.
Like, it all depends on how busy everyone else,
Sure.
Is scheduled is, because we want it, one, it's not a huge budget, and 2, it's a fairly short. We want them to be available soon, so
Yeah.
the pool of people may not be extensive. But the one piece, I guess, that I'd throw back at you, if you wanted, is that we could draft this RFP. We could have the kickoff meeting. The kickoff meeting could be, I think, what Commissioner Stewart, I believe, was the one that was kind of throwing it out there, where they come in, they ask the questions about, well, what is this all about? And get the specific. We'll try to. It's not going to be that complicated. I think the Northwest Area Plan probably merits, like the full-blown one, merits more of that kind of approach. But that piece is there if you guys want it, where we just, we draft an RFP, we send it out there. Those interested parties come in and kind of, you have some FaceTime with them, and they ask questions, and, but I've seen this happens all the time for Public Works when they have to have like some, contractor come in. They send out an RFP. Sometimes they have 4 or 5 people in this room. Sometimes there's 20. So it really kind of depends on. I don't want to waste your guys' time. We have one person, and then clearly we have one decision to make, or we send it back out there. But if you guys want to be available for that, or if you want to be included in that piece, that's an option. So.
Well, the solicitation piece is important to me too. I'd like to find out. I'd like to reach back out to a couple board members who, and I think even a past board member that I talked to had some ideas of organizations that we may want to approach for this project as well. So, and find out what Lisa. I know Lisa had some thoughts on this, and
Well, and I think that
then
you
we
put
can
it-
solicit some requests
Right.
directly as well as have the RFP out
Yeah,
there.
just have it out there for the general public, and then follow up with some specific, like, hey, want to make sure this is out there, and we feel like you'd be a good fit, or whatever the case may be.
And if we have 5 or 6 that we found, it may not be necessary. I guess it's fine to put it out there, but
Right.
that gives us some people to choose from.
And do you put in this RFP that there's potentially a follow-on, so it is more attractive? Because I tend to agree, for $15,000,
Right.
you might, especially with the way the market is right now,
Yeah.
most people are pretty busy, so to attract people for $15,000, but if you knew you had a $100,000 follow-on potential, can you put that, is that?
I think we could probably draft the RFP in that way, to say that the intent is, this is, to get the community feedback with the intent of following.
Yeah, phase 1, yeah.
In 2018 with a full-blown, small area plan.
Right.
And that is the goal, so that's
Right.
not inaccurate, so.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that would be the way to do it in order to have it be.
So Stephen, how quickly could the RFP be produced and out there, as you say?
It's a good question. It is what, the 6th? I think we
It-
could probably
it
get
is
something.
7:38 p.m.
Based on last night, you got 3 or 4 more
I forgot
hours.
to add-
16th, right?
I forgot to add this
No, it's
evening.
the 15th, so,
There'd be nobody
I think by the end of the
last
month,
night,
certainly,
that's for
but, so, I mean, and if that changes your guys' opinion about whether or not you want to see it on the 5th, that, you know, but,
Well, to Commissioner Reese's comment, if we could see a
A
draft
draft,
of it
yeah.
without having to go through any sort of hearing or anything like that.
Okay, I can follow
think
up
that'd
with
be great.
you on that
If-
tomorrow.
If Hillary says that it has to be done through a public meeting, then we could wait till the 5th, I guess.
Or,
You know.
Or push it
or,
out.
or let staff do their job and
Just
do the
let staff do
RFP
it,
and,
Yeah, and just get it out
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
you do.
I'd vote to push it out if they can't send it to us.
to
let's
comment
wait
on it
3
if you
weeks.
can, and if
Yeah.
not, to get it out.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
is that for all of you kind of land, or?
Do you
Yeah,
trust-
I mean,
do you trust
I'd like
Steve?
to see it. I guess I'd be surprised if we couldn't at least see it.
Well, what if we do it
And
this
even
way? What if we
provided
couch it
feedback
this way?
directly
We
to
send it
staff.
out, and at minimum, I think that you guys could say we feel like we need to hold a meeting on this, you know, like, and then at that meeting you make your edits, you know. But if you're, oh, this looks pretty good, you feel pretty comfortable with it, then we get the green light to go forward.
Mhm.
So that seemed like a reasonable.
That's a
Sure.
good
Yeah, that works.
approach
Yep.
to me, yeah.
Sounds fair.
Agree. And then we would need a deadline to probably get recommendations back to staff that we may want you to
Right.
approach
Yeah.
firms directly or organizations directly.
Yeah,
Okay.
but with the
Let me,
goal of
let me reiterate real quickly that I would personally, and I would really prefer not to have a consultant that's familiar with our town and what we've been doing and the processes that we've been going through over the last several years. So I just want to put that out there again.
I'm
So,
with
I
you.
mean, when we
Yeah.
put it out there, you know, I don't want a friend coming to say, hey, I can help you guys with this. And as a matter of fact, I've been thinking about this for a long
Mm-hmm.
time, and I like,
you want to avoid the bias. I
Yeah.
totally understand.
So-
When you said fresh eyes.
Yeah. Well, and that's somewhat our criteria for, while we're going through this process. And, I mean, if we might only get one person that comes forward and wants to talk to us, right? But if, you know, if we're fortunate enough to get 5 or 7 or so, one of the first criteria is, okay, which of these are fresh eyes that we haven't had working in our town before?
Right.
You know,
and the point has been made that $15,000 is not a lot
No,
of money
it's not
for
very
a
much,
consultant.
you know, this is a.
It's not a big
this is-
project either, but
No,
you
it's
know,
not.
like
It's not.
so.
And it's, yeah. So
And I-
that's also, I just wanted to look at what organizations are out there to help with things like this as well, besides.
The trick is to
the-
have the folks that can do the community meeting, you know, and get people engaged and have some sort of planning background at the same
Yeah.
time. And they're out there,
Yeah.
but you know, like I don't know enough to know. I mean, I know that when we did the town hall, they brought in a consultant that was, you know, adept at handling community meetings, but whether or not there was any planning background, I don't know. So, but that person would also be familiar with this area and may not provide the fresh set of eyes you're looking for. So, so we'll put it out there and see.
Is that the only project she's worked on for the town?
No, I think, from my understanding, she was brought on because she'd worked on a previous project, but I
Okay.
don't know which project that was. So, I think it may have been one of the parks back in the day or something. So,
I do have to say, I thought they did a really nice job with that, despite circumstances.
yeah. Well, we had. I can't remember the name of that. We had an architecture firm, Anderson Hallis or something like that, and then we had, and I wasn't a part of it at all. Just as a third-party bystander, I understand we also had somebody that was helping to facilitate the meeting. So, but yeah, I can go forward with those marching orders and try to have something to you by the end of the month to review and make a decision on, so that we get it out early September. And
Our
then-
next meeting is the 5th?
The 5th, yeah.
Okay,
And,
so we would want to know before then whether it needs to end up on that agenda, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That's fair.
And then I think that, based on the direction that I related earlier, the other, September's kind of going to be a little busy with, attending the Transportation Safety Committee meeting and then attending the budget review meeting. So
So, Stephen, I do have an opinion about that.
Uh-huh.
A couple of things came up for me last night during that meeting, and the first was I thought that there was some feeling to push that agenda item just aside, to move it off the board's agenda and pass it along to someone else. And that piece made me a little bit uncomfortable. But then I also heard some other sentiment from other board members that they thought that what we were doing was important and they liked it a lot. So having prefaced that, I think for me, I would like to see this item remain a board item agenda and not necessarily be moved to the Transportation Safety Committee like at this point. When we talked about this, and we spent a lot of time talking about it, I felt like we were pretty clear within ourselves that what our community was asking for and what people in our community were asking for was action. And what I kind of felt like last night is that there's more process that was being intended, and that didn't feel right. So I think that, in my opinion, I'd want to see this continue to be a board item, even if it is pushed down the road away, if you will. I understand the next meeting is next board meeting is busy, and that it might be difficult to get it on that agenda. But what about the one after that, or even the one after that? Because I think it's just important that we make it clear to our board and to the people in our community that we want to see this as an issue that's on the forefront.
So I would take the opposite view of that also and look at it as if one of the other committees were to bring forth something to the board about planning, some kind of development planning or something like that, that they would recommend that they come before the Planning Commission. And I think if we team up with the Transportation Safety Committee and present to them and they agree, that I think that the results to the board would probably go through faster and get on the, get more recognition if both the Planning Commission and Transportation Safety both agreed on something and got it put forth. That'd be my thought process.
Really, like it carried more weight.
Well,
Yeah.
I hear
two
what you're
committees.
saying. I hear what you're saying. My belief is that it becomes too diluted when you do that. We're talking about a very specific project that we'd like to see happen, and we'd like to see some action and that moving forward. Once you start grouping that with other issues and other pieces, then it becomes a little bit watered down, in my opinion. If there was some way that we could partner or have be involved with the Transportation Safety Committee and assure that this piece remains broken out as an individual issue and just not combined again with the overall plan, which is kind of what has happened, then I would be in support of that. But I'm just not certain that we could do that and that would happen.
Well, I thought what I did like, what I heard, is when they took it to the town manager and he said, we've already instructed the town to include this in the budget somewhere in the roundabout, at least the roundabout side of it, and include it in there, and that's going to be talked about, and it will be in the budget, it'll be in the plan, whatever the
Budget
three-year plan.
discussions.
The
Yeah,
budget discussion,
it's,
so it's going to get a discussion.
Right. No,
at the board level, isn't it?
Correct.
The roundabout?
So, I mean, I think that the direction is, I mean, for one, I guess the first response is it is a process. You know, like the board has to kind of gather all the recommendations from all the committees and, you know, look at everything kind of like holistically, you know, especially the budget, because there's only a limited amount of funds, and how they allocate that over the years is probably one of the more arduous tasks they have to do. But I also understand your point. So I think that, you know, going to that meeting on the 18th, I guess it is, and clarifying that you don't want this to get lumped in with something else, that you need it to stand alone, and that this is I mean, I don't know that we've gotten to the point. We really just identified, you know, 88th Street and McCaslin to look at, and I know that we kind of threw Coal Creek in with the Northwest Area Plan, but I know that there were more than 2 kind of traffic-related issues in the town, and we may have prioritized intentionally McCaslin and 88th Street. And if those are our priorities, then that's what we want to kind of clarify to the Transportation and Safety Committee that we feel like we need to be looking at. The one item that's on their topic for the 18th meeting is the South Coal Creek. No, actually, it is Coal Creek.
No,
I think
Coal
it's
Creek.
this Coal
Yeah, I
Creek,
sure hope
correct?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've
Okay.
been being told that
So,
it's been
yeah,
going
no, I
on.
apologize.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is Coal Creek. So, but you probably, I mean, those are distinct areas. So, I mean, they are looking at, I mean, I think that they looked at 88th Street already. They're looking at the same areas you guys are concerned about. But if there's priorities that you want to have, or if there's, you know, a sense of urgency that why not get, you know, spend $6,000 or $7,000 for the speed signs, if that's, but I also think that we didn't really, I mean, as good of a job as we did going through everything, I don't know that we said, you know, recommended, you know, well, we feel like, you know, narrowing the lanes is going to be the most effective, or we feel like reducing the speed limit is our number one thing. So I think those are the things you guys want to think about, and maybe sub-prioritize, you know, like that's what we feel like is the best solution, or talk to Alex some more and figure out that, you know, whatever, I think the speed limit reduction, if they would do it, is probably the biggest impact, you know, on the face of those low-hanging fruit recommendations, and if not, then the flashing speed sign. But that's for you guys to make a recommendation on. But that's maybe what they need in order to say, yeah, well, we can squeeze the, you know, $12,000 or $14,000 out of in this year's budget in order to, or next year's budget in order to get that done for McCaslin. But then what do we need for Coal Creek, and what do we need for 88th Street? So it's not an answer to your question. I totally understand that you want it to stay on their agenda item, and this has been 24 hours, so I don't know that, you know, I know that was what Trustee Pennington wanted, was for this to get pushed to a different meeting and for the board to discuss it at a different meeting, but that didn't seem to get any traction. But I don't really know that the whole board echoed any of those, you know, kind of directions from Transportation and Safety Committee to the budget. But I also think that those 2 are your avenues, and you can talk about both issues. And talking about the budget is talking with the board. It's just not at one of their board meetings. It's at the budget meeting. So I think your avenues are identified for you. They may not be the ones that are going to get you an immediate impact, but I think that this is something that they want to chew on for a little bit and hear some. That's kind of what I got from it. But maybe if this conversation started at 9:00 last night, or 7:30, you know, like they would have been able to get through it more too. So I understand
That
where
was
you're
my
coming
point
from.
exactly.
You know, so.
Yeah, and you know, I do appreciate your perspective on that. I think that had more time been allotted and available, then we would have been able to make some of those points that we've spent hours in this room talking about, and we just weren't able to do that in that forum last night because of the time constraints.
Right.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with the time constraints. This board was here for another hour plus discussing yet another topic. And so my blood's sitting here boiling, and I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute. But I am extremely, and I'd like the board, I hope they listen to this, but I am extremely disappointed at what happened last night. And this commission pushed hard, I'm sure other committees did too, to get things heard. And the fact that every committee before and after us was heard to the nth degree. And we were pushed off on both topics, with the exception of you know, thankfully, I guess, one of the board members raising a vote, and there were, 5-2 vote, and our 15K got passed. No discussion was had. It wasn't thoughtful. We didn't sit and have a conversation with them. We sat and talked about a slide for an hour. We talked about a fire truck for an hour. We talked about open space advisory committee for an hour on either side of the planning commission's recommendations. And we were pushed off. We weren't even permitted to have discussions about it. We're too tired. This is important. We don't want to be yet. Right after that, boom, till after midnight, they go on additional topics. And I hope board members will listen to this, because I think that was one of the more disrespectful things I've experienced in all the years that I've been working with this town. For the amount of work that we put in, for the effort that we put towards getting that on the agenda, pushing to get decisions made, and then truly just, we're too tired. This is going on too long. Let's put this off. And the transportation item that needed to be heard last night, because we have a striping project we're faced with. We couldn't talk for 45 minutes. We had Alex sitting out there. He'd already talked to us about it.
Why would he?
We've already gone through it with him. He could have come up and spoke for 10 minutes and said, look, without any issue, we can narrow the street to this. This is our recommendation. Can we talk about the speed limit? Maybe you don't want to decide that tonight, but we could talk about it for 10 or 15 minutes. We sure as hell talked about whether or not we should have a slide through a rattlesnake field for about 45 minutes. And I'm, that's, all of these topics are important, but to have those discussions just minimized angered me. It was everything I could do to not get up and spend 10 minutes venting at that meeting last night. Just allowed it to go through. And I'm doing this for the benefit of the public to hear this, and for the benefit of our staff to hear this, and the benefit of the board to hear this. That was horrible. So,
And I agree with you, Commissioner McCool. How the agenda was laid out, I think should have where that should have started, of items of great importance. Fire trucks, slides, could be further down the list than the transportation issue we have on McCaslin, or addressing the Northwest Superior small area plan.
I'll even
and
avoid the priority of what I think they should be,
I
because I want to be
agree.
respectful of the other committees. But
No, I agree.
you
We
spent
were the
time
only ones that
before
weren't
and
heard.
after our agenda item and told us that there wasn't enough time to talk about ours. That was wrong, because you did. I went home. We were going to go out and try to have a beer and talk about this, and things were closed, and we got home, and the meeting's still going on. We sat and just watched this thing drag on.
Wow.
Afterwards,
Striping could
I think it was
10
midnight.
minutes.
I mean, I went to bed close to midnight, and it was still going on.
Striping could have been handled in 10 minutes.
Yeah, that didn't need to be a big
There's Nothing
discussion.
mysterious about it.
No.
I'm still not clear. I thought they were going to try to push all of us over another 2 meetings. They tried to do it to the next meeting, and somebody said that sort of filled up already. And so I was under the impression they would try to go for the one after that. But then but as a counter to that, there was also this desire by, I think it's Trustee Ryan, to come before the TS, Traffic and Safety Committee. I'm not sure whether that wipes out the first one or whether they're both alive.
I think we could actually attend the transportation and safety meeting, and then a subsequent board meeting after that.
Okay.
I just
But I
think,
agree, I mean, they had to have that our exhibit, our presentation in front of them. They had
Trustee
to,
Ryan said it's the first time he had seen it. And do you know when that McCaslin report went to the board, in the board minutes? That was back in June, July. Those were all written up. We didn't really change anything.
That's true.
Those were written up and put in minutes and provided to the board. And this is the first time I've seen it.
well,
Okay.
I don't think he knew all the history.
I get it. I believe him. I absolutely believe it's the first time he saw it, and I know they have volumes of information to go
Right.
through. But when you have an agenda item sitting up there, and
Well, when you have almost an
I know.
emergency from a timing standpoint, because it doesn't
Right.
get restriped for 3 years,
Yep.
and it's gonna start in 2 weeks, to me, that's an emergency. And what's so magical
Yeah.
about a stripe? I mean, okay, it's eight inches wide, it's gonna
Yes.
do a better job, and that's it.
And I had every expectation that requesting that the circle in Indiana be put on the budget would probably get deferred for more intense discussion or referred to the Transportation Committee. I mean, those are likely things that you might expect to happen. But I sure would have loved to have heard, yes, you're right. This has been sitting for 5-7 years. This needs to be brought to the forefront. And we should have just had that support from the board. It was almost a no-brainer, right? That this is an item we'd agreed upon 5 years ago. Yes, let's, in fact, I believe staff has already, even to have just said this up on the dais, right? That staff's already been working on this. It's going to be put in front of the Transportation Committee. It's going to be discussed in the budget, and we're going to look at it and stay involved and attend the meetings, and you've got the board support that this should be looked at, right? But that didn't even come out of that meeting. It came from Matt. I think Matt indicated when he was sitting there that yeah, we're actually looking at that. That was the level of attention that item got as well. So
Well, that was my frustration, to hear someone say that we needed to have more community engagement around this. And, that's exactly what we've been saying for, a few months, is that the community is done engaging around this. The community was done engaging around this, 5 years ago. And then it came up again, and the community was engaged 3 years ago. And, it's time to move forward on some of this. And, I understand, as much as the next person, the need for process. But at some point, process is no longer process. It's getting bogged down. It needs to happen. Something needs to take place in order for process to have been successful, and that's just it. It's processed. So.
Is there anything we can do to try to get that 2-week gap filled with the wider stripe, or is it a dead issue?
Or you
I mean,
can certainly
we-
ask. I don't know.
Any place we can beg or something? Because to me, to have to wait 3 years for the next striping,
I'll relate it to Alex and let him know that it's still a concern. And if I don't know what data he has on the effect of it. And from what I recall, it was 6 months ago at this point that he came up here and kind of commented generally on the options that you guys had, and I think he thought that it might be a reduction in speed in a couple miles an hour. But the actual reduction in the speed limit or the actual flashing signs were probably more effective means. But I mean, I think that they're all means of, you throw all of those things at it, that's probably the most effective. So I don't know whether or not, and he knows better than I do about those studies, but that's my recollection of the impression he had or the impression he gave. But it's certainly something I could, ask him, but I think that the recommendation would be, restripe that thing at 8 inches wide like he's proposing and actually reduce the lane width to 11 feet, But what he said last night, which I think kind of ended the conversation, was 12 foot's the standard for even a collector, is what I believe he said. And we have, so like you think about, Rock Creek Parkway, I imagine those lanes, even though you're supposed to be going slower and you have to kind of meander your way through that because it's so twisty and turny, it's still striped at 12 foot wide, so. And I don't know. I mean, hopefully people are paying attention to staying in their lane as they go. But McCaslin is so straight. It's such a straight shot that I don't know that restriping it to make it narrower is really going to slow you down. I think restriping it, if you were winding back and forth, would make it more tricky to stay in your lane. But a straight shot downhill like that is, probably less effective. But
well, that's why we had several recommendations.
Right.
Right.
Enforcement, striping, speed
Right.
limit reduction, and and
monuments,
yeah, and
curbs.
moving in that direction, right? So starting to make people aware that
One,
You need to be slowing down. You're coming
Right.
you're coming into a town.
Residential.
Yeah.
That's right.
and I think you guys, like one of the better, or more strategic things was having everything kind of separated out. We had, a low-hanging fruit item in the $15,000 initial study that we were able to get approved, and I understand your frustration about not getting some direction on the low-hanging fruit for the transportation stuff, because I think you guys, you had a big item, and then you have some smaller things that could be done in the near term, and that's what I'm hearing. You guys are most frustrated about not getting some direct feedback
That
on
they weren't
those.
discussed, I think.
That too.
Not even lack of direction,
Yeah.
that
And
there wasn't even,
Right. I mean, the time we took to discuss the fact that they were tired and it was going to take too long and they wanted to give it their full
Couldn't finish
attention, we could have talked about that.
yeah. Yet other
And you're
things
right. There-
retained their attention.
The other
until
committees were
midnight.
heard, they discussed, they had presentations. We had, Jim did a good job. Chairman Sawtelle did a good
They
job,
did
I
a great
think.
job.
But yeah, we need to have more action done. I have more issue with the order in which the agenda was published. And, you look at how, prioritize those items. So that's where I came up, let alone not being heard all the way through.
Well,
But
I mean, we had
just
discussions.
the order in which those were on the
I
agenda.
think we got to follow up
Yeah,
in
sure.
terms of getting us rescheduled with them.
Yeah.
And
No,
a
I would,
date frozen in time, and it's up to them to get us before the TSC,
yeah.
before that.
I would like to make a request to be put on the agenda until we're heard on the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting. The squeaky wheel gets the grease.
That's the
Well, I mean, I'll make it
we've spent
official.
since
I'll
January
ask
doing
Stephen, will
this.
you please ask Matt? I know he won't, but,
You know.
I mean, we can officially
ask.
ask you, will you please
And I can
talk
officially
to
ask,
staff about
Right. You can
about getting this
officially
transportation issue on the next agenda, right? I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we've been talking about.
it's a request, you can go ask him.
I just
I
hate to
mean,
lose
it's-
wide stripes for 3 years because we can't
Right.
get our act together in 2 weeks on something that's very, very
was-
straightforward.
Trustee Ryan was talking about, or one of them, which side do you put the extra paint on to narrow the lane down? And I think Alex made a comment that he'd put 2 inches on each, split it.
Or you could come in 4 inches.
Or I
Right,
would say
yeah.
come in 4 inches, because the whole point
Or
is
8
to
or
narrow
what.
the lane down.
Yeah.
But if he has to stay at
But that's a
12
little
feet-
different than what I thought we
Yeah.
heard. I mean, I thought we heard that those could be reduced, that we could bring those lanes in a foot, I believe was the
That's
discussion
right.
that we had in that meeting, and that was our recommendation,
Mm-hmm.
that we just narrow those into a foot. So if we were misguided, I don't ever want to be at a town board meeting where what we thought was, what we agreed on and we're recommending is different than what you're allowed to do, right? So,
Sure.
and I don't know, that's what I think happened.
No, I agree. That's what I heard too.
Yeah,
I mean, that it's
so-
possible, but then when he was asked about what the standard width was 12, and so I think.
Yeah,
that
so we
they-
need that back. We've got to have that back before we go stand in front of our board and make a recommendation. We talked about that quite a long time ago, so being notified that, we were mistaken, we can't bring that down from
No, I
12
think
to
you
11.
could. I think he absolutely said you could. It just would be
It's
like
not the
a reduced
standard.
standard or
Okay.
whatever.
And
So
we
there-
didn't get
but
that
we
in
didn't get the
discussion,
context
so,
of that.
yeah, and we
of
weren't
the
allowed to have the
standard,
discussion.
yeah,
Right,
so-
right.
so, but.
Yeah.
But that even helps couch your argument that we understand, that the recommendation could have been written, we understand the standard's 12, but we also understand that it can be reduced to 11, just so
And that's
that
acceptable,
you
right.
address that question before it's raised, and this case maybe dismissed, so.
So who would ask Alex, you?
Ask Alex to stripe it 8 inches over, I can ask that too. Yeah, I can ask him to see what he's, what his thoughts are. I don't know, and I don't know whether or not that is something that, I think that would have needed discretion, from the town board or direction
Right.
from the town board, but now I think it does, because it was brought up and they seem to not give us direction on it, so. But we can talk about it, and we can see whether or not we can get those items back on the agenda, and maybe he can, if they're back on the agenda for a meeting. I just don't know when his window of restriping kind of ends, because we could get snow the first week of
Yeah.
October or even earlier
Does he have
sometime,
to
so.
get his place in line, so to speak, for striping the whole thing, or, who? is
What do
an
you mean?
outside-
I think it's scheduled.
Outside contractor
Yeah,
come in and
it's-
do it? or-
It's
already
probably an
scheduled.
outside contractor that comes in and does it, but I don't know. So it could be our staff too, but.
he inquire whether hypothetically, there's another slot available in 6 weeks? And we can
If
take
you could
another
push it
run at
further, yeah, I could talk to
rather
Alex
than
about
wait 3
both of
years.
those things.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, there was no clarification on that, was
I mean, the
there?
worst thing that can happen is they're gonna say no, but they might say that if we can kick it 6 weeks, we can get it approved.
Well, no, our whole point of pushing this topic and this issue with McCaslin, the transportation safety aspect of it, is to keep it safe.
Right.
It's a dangerous, fast road right now, and there's a lot of cyclists on there.
And there are people
you know,
trying to get out of our community onto that
yeah,
road.
there's people trying to go to school with their kids, trying to get out to go to work, things like that. But that, you know, it's all about the safety. We're not doing this just to, you know, push some buttons. You know, before an accident really happens and people seriously get injured, we want these things addressed because we see a concern.
All I know is like driving through Boulder when they put in some wide striping. Man, that hits you right in the face when
Yep.
you're driving. You can't overlook it because they're so prominent,
Yep.
which is what I think we're trying to do here, much less, plus create some good relations with cyclists is a basic proposition.
Yep.
And the town is a good place for cyclists.
Yeah.
The only, I guess, silver lining that I try to offer up and make it dismissed immediately is that, I mean, I think you guys did make some headway. You know, like if the roundabout on Indiana gets pushed from 2020 to 2018 or even 2019,
Yeah.
that's a win.
big. That's
And
big. That's
and if
huge.
that actually gets installed, then our conversation about striping width or lane width may not be as big of a deal as. I mean, I know these are things we want to get done as soon as possible to make this situation safer, but I think that if you win that battle, then that's the larger thing to actually reduce the speeds on in this
No,
corridor.
That's true.
So just to keep that in mind. But
And I think it's key for us to be paying attention because decisions have been made over the years to spend millions of dollars on things, and that didn't get done, right? There were decisions made about parks and other capital projects that cost more money than that roundabout would cost. And those decisions were made after the transportation plan was put in place. And nobody stood up here and said, whoa, hello, wait a minute. Great that you're having this discussion about spending $3 million on ABC. Do you remember that you've got $1 million project here on the transportation to increase the safety of our residents and blah, blah, blah? Can we please make sure that that is on your mind and that you are changing the priority of that item in order to do this, right? And the only way to do that is to pay attention, you know, and to call it out when we see it happening. And
It seems like that's gonna be our role to some extent, is to call
It
them,
is.
call them out.
I think it is. I mean, we've got to be paying, you know, and people aren't paying attention, right? They're not until something happens or until it becomes an issue. And then the process starts all over again, like Anthony said. Now all of a sudden, now we got to have the process. Wait a minute, we already had it. This is a decision point of, are we going to start another process to spend $3 million on something else without discussing the $1 million that we agreed we would spend on this item 3 years ago, and we haven't done yet. And so I think we need to be paying attention. And
Well, with that said, how do we make sure then that in the 2018 budget that's going to be talked about on September 26th, that we get earmarked the $60,000 to $100,000? How do we get a placeholder in the 2018 budget, knowing that if we do the first phase of the plan, that we have money for the second phase?
I think so. I don't think anything, 2018 budget hasn't been set, so that's just to be clear. But there are placeholders for, I think what you guys have done already this year is you have placeholders on there for this, or at least discussion topics, so it hasn't been approved yet, but it's going to be discussed for both
But
the
is
Northwest
someone going to
area
put
plan.
that, but the other money, I'm not talking about the 15, but the 60 to
No, yeah,
100,000?
no, yeah, because you
Who
got.
puts that, but how does that get it introduced? I don't understand the process. Like, how do we,
we've introduced it.
You've introduced it,
There
and
are
it's
board
on
members
there.
who are pushing for it, and
So-
staff will be responsible. But I do think coming to the budget meetings and
Right.
paying attention is a really good way to
but
ensure that it's
is that how
happening.
we?
Yeah, no, that's how you, and you could come to meetings and say, we're still advocating for these
Okay.
items or whatever, if you wanted to, and I think that there's gonna be this new, kind of like the chamber update, where we have committee and commission update as well, where you can come and you can state what you've been working on, or you can kind of clarify that, we've had our first two, open houses and they're going great, or whatever you want to say, you can provide these updates. But you can also go there and say, we're still recommending that this, gets approved for next year. But you can come to those budget meetings too. So I think that's the place. And I think that the budget is complicated. I've never sat through their hour and hour, like they have, this is one of many, 4-hour budget discussions where they kind of go through the line items. So, but they pull money from different pools. And so like, Parks and Open Space has funds for certain things. And, and I don't know, I mean, it's probably the general fund that funds most of the stuff that Planning Commission is recommending. But there's also, a transportation fund. So I don't know whether or not that budget, I think Alex was explaining, gets set for, it's $1.5 million or something like that. It was comparable to what the cost for the roundabout was, is all I remember. So it was either $2 million or it was in that ballpark. So it was, basically what he said was that would take up most of the budget for that particular year. So whether or not there's room to shift money from one place to another in order to, double that budget for the year so that maintenance isn't sacrificed while you do a project, I don't know. So
I think he said something about he had to fix up Rock Creek Parkway.
Yeah.
he's got
It wasn't
probably
built-
a.
It wasn't built right or something like that, and that was gonna take up, I don't know, a million.
Yeah, there's all sorts
million
of
sticks in the
things
ground,
that
but
have to get weighed, and but I think that was one example or something. But I
Right.
don't remember what road it was.
So let me ask you probably a really bad question but it seems like if the budgeting process is happening in September and whenever it gets approved in
Approved,
October
yeah.
and
Yep,
then,
November.
it seems like we should be accelerating our plan for the Planning Commission of what we're going to take on for the following year, because if we need to get money set aside for anything, it seems like we've already missed the boat like we did this year. And again, this was our first year, I think, at getting on and getting with the board, but it seems like we should be accelerating this to September, October of our plan for next year, just like the budget is, to make sure if we need money, that we're asking for the money in advance, and maybe we're not ready to do that.
I agree. I mean, we brought that up a couple of meetings ago. Can we get some amount earmarked,
Yeah.
for Planning Commission work plan items, right? If it's truly the board's desire to have the Planning Commission work on planning items, then let's just earmark the budget. I mean,
Yep.
the money doesn't have to get spent, but let's make sure we budget for it.
Right.
And
Or if it's in the general fund and it needs to be,
Right.
if the board comes in and says, you know what, we did set aside $20,000 for planning commission, but we have this other project that definitely needs it, it's in the
Just needs
general
to be
fund, but
discussed.
at least there's some money earmarked for
Yeah.
planning commission projects.
And I'm hoping it's 100 or
Sure.
150, but
Sure.
Well, I think we have to ask. We at least have to voice
But we have
it.
to ask, yes.
Yeah, because it seems like
We
some
have
of
to
the
ask
other groups
repeatedly.
get funding
Yeah.
because of who they are. The Park and Rec, again, I don't know how all the funding occurs, but I don't think Planning Commission gets any money, unless we ask for it. And,
I think we just gotta hang tough and just keep at it. I mean, keep
Well,
coming at them.
there's interest in us working on these items.
Yeah. That
We
was
saw
clear
that
last
last
night.
night. We
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
I
it's
thought they
clear
were-
that we impressed them.
Yep.
I do have a level of appreciation that they wanted to give us the attention, but
Not today.
yeah, that was a mistake. But I certainly felt from every board member
True.
that they were appreciative of the work that we
Agreed.
had done, and that those were important topics to be working through. So I think we'd have that support, right, to continue that.
The only thing I guess I would suggest, and I think that's kind of where you're getting at, is I think that every year we start talking about the work plan for the next year in November. So if that needs to be bumped up so that you have, I mean, if I was the board member, I would be asking, well, if you're asking for funds, in September for a 2008 planning commission plan, well, what is that planning commission, what is your work plan going to look like next year? And it may be, the Northwest sub-area plan is going to take up a lot of that time, and, but you want additional funds in order to, cushion, the 70,000 that gets earmarked for the actual study or something like that. So, But I think starting to think about what your work plan for 2018 may be and what your suggestions are would be a good thing to,
Yeah.
and we can have that discussion earlier if you guys want to bump it up a month or something as well. But
Or we could just ask for an allowance.
as long as you do your chores.
Just ask for an allowance.
But we are going to have, I mean, I keep telling you this, but and they keep getting pushed or delayed, or we keep having more comments before we get it to a point where I'm, going to recommend taking it to you guys or to the board for meetings. But there are several development applications in the queue that I assume will come to you guys, probably beginning next month. So, and they may be several of them over the course of the fall and winter. So we'll have to, balance that out as well. But I also think that half the time, we're not going to be using planning commission meetings to have these open houses. These open houses are going to be at different times of the day and in different parts of the town, so that we can get as broad of engagement as we can. That's what I'm envisioning, but we'll see what this, whoever we hire also recommends. But I imagine we're still going to want to have these work sessions where we talk about the feedback that we're getting, and we keep these things moving forward. So we'll have to balance those items. So we may have some longer meetings ourselves. So.
And I know I keep asking this, but can we get an update each? Can we get an update on development permits or building permits that were pulled? Is that for the town? I mean, if permits were issued, for the example, for the development of the townhomes, can we be kept abreast of that? Are you able to tell us each meeting if permits were pulled? And I'm not looking for the
No.
the porch addition on somebody's house, but if there's a development permit that's pulled outside of a PD,
I guess
I'd like to be aware of the development that's
first
going
time
on,
I
so.
feel like you've asked this question in this way. Like, I think you've asked
Yeah.
questions about 201 or 401
Yeah.
William. And I still don't, there's an application in, I don't think the status has changed. But it's not my application, so I'd have to get, with Ernie and figure out what's been submitted. Typically, if there's something new like that, where it's got to meet setbacks and lot coverage and all that stuff, I'll have done a review on it, or I'll get it for a referral. But I don't know, I guess the parameters of what you're asking. Is it just every permit within original town, or is it every permit?
That's the only
substantial
place that
permitting?
there are going to be any without a PD, but I would say I would like anywhere in town where, and again, looking for, I may not know
You
enough
just
to
want a PC
articulate it.
update on
we just want an update
significant
on
building permits or something.
Yeah, when
like
a building
that.
permit has been issued for development. And again, I'm not looking for the guy putting the deck on the back of his house. I don't think those are the types of permits we're looking for. But if there's a construction being done, a demolition being done of a property, or a new property being built, just so we're aware of what's going on.
So something
and
to
I
be
think
a-
that's anywhere. But I think the only place you can do it is in original town. There's nowhere else that's not under a PD. But right, I don't think there's anything else that's not under a PD, so it sort of limits it to that. But
Yeah, most would require either a site development plan or
right.
some sort of review. But
But yes, I would say regardless of where it is, I just think that, and also any other progress that we're trying to pay attention to the things that are going on, with the hotel and the town center, and getting updates on things that may have not had to come to the planning commission would be nice, just in case we're not all paying attention to all the details that are going on.
for the most part, most stuff comes to you guys, so you're gonna.
Yeah.
But for this specific, these two specific things, demo permits and.
I'll just keep asking. It'll come.
No,
to me,
it's fine.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Well, we do. I get asked all the time. Excuse me. I get asked all the time. Do I know what's going on with this project and with that project and what's going in over there?
Right. Yeah.
And so just to, even though it may not have come before the planning commission, like some of the things in original town that are, I guess, used by right, that just go through a permit review. I have no idea about those, but I get questions about them.
Yeah.
And-
No, I can try to update you as
and
much
I-
as
I
possible.
look-
Yeah, I
rather-
mean, I want to know if these 4 lots over here are going to have 4 homes.
Sure.
You know, if there's
And well, and
application for
I end up
those.
looking rather foolish when you
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I don't know what's going on
Yeah.
over there."
I'm
Well,
only
aren't
on
you
the planning commission, why
commissioner?
would I know?
Yeah.
It's like
No,
yeah.
we can work on something like that where it's, I mean, the one thing that I can tell you that I'm getting calls on all the time is Resolute. You know, people are wondering what's actually
Right.
being developed over there.
Yeah.
And all we have is the horizontal infrastructure approval to, so what we did last year, as you probably recall, was, you know, subdivide the property and rezone a portion of it. But we did not approve any vertical development out there yet, so we'll have to, those FDPs will be coming. So people kind of, you know, they're not nearly as intrigued when I tell them that it's a roadway
Roads.
that's going in and a sidewalk that's going in and utilities that are going in.
Utilities,
But, but there is a lot of work and there's a lot of vehicles out there doing that grading because it's a
Which means
substantial
something is
amount.
going to happen.
Something will happen out there. And
But do we
do
ever
it-
think of putting that like on our internet site, on the town,
Yeah, it
just to
wouldn't-
let
it
them
wouldn't
know?
hurt, yeah.
Yeah, because it would,
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've got questioned the same thing, everyone, my wife has, but what's going on? There's a hotel
we
going in.
would,
and,
we
you
would
know.
love to do a lot more, but
Yeah,
it's
gotta have
tough.
staff
resources.
So,
Yeah,
it
no,
is
I
tough,
know,
yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's a great idea, though, to kind of, if I get
Yeah.
2 calls on something, put it up on the internet so that I don't get 4 more, so.
Maybe that's what we need. We need in our budget is we need a planning commission page that has funding to do updates on planning related items so that they can get the money to keep the community updated on things that are going on around.
We
It's
need an
important,
intern, we
huh?
need an intern, that's what we need. We need an intern.
There you go. So,
So
No, some, no.
So very quickly, I have an unrelated topic, and I'm not necessarily expecting anything to be done, but I just wanted to bring this up, especially in light of all of the talk about, you know, our wonderful wildflower park, you know, and you know how proud we are of that, and it's interesting because I was up there on Sunday, and I was looking at the trees that have been planted and all of these plants that are there, and I was shocked that they're all being taken over by weeds. So there's these weeds growing up these, you know, these 6.5-foot pine trees and just choking them to death. And then there's other, you know, shrubbery that's there that's being infested with weeds. And I'm looking at that going, well, shouldn't somebody be taking care of that?
Did you pull some weeds?
Well, I looked at them and, you know, I took some pictures of them, but, you know, I guess I was hoping that they'd just, you know, burn away with the sun or something. I don't know. So, but no, I just thought that was interesting, and it's kind of a side note, and I'm not sure, you know, what direction to take with that, or if there's any direction to take with that. I'm sure someone else has noticed that.
I can mention it to somebody I know will care, so
No, yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah, no, I can mention to Parks and Open Space staff too.
Yeah.
But the other, I guess, you know, just thinking about you know, it's probably the status of, for as far as updates for development go, is like just a status update on, you know, the medical office building is under construction and I don't know that the building permit's been pulled, but it's ready to be issued. So for the Element Hotel, so that construction is supposed to be starting, you know, in the next month or the next few weeks or something
Yep.
as well. But the Marshall Road extension has been completed to get them out to their site, and the hotel should be under construction soon. But those are the type of updates that I can kind of give you, provide up.
So the asphalt for Marshall Road stops.
Well short of the
Right at-
creek, yeah. But
yeah.
it's basically where their access drive was designed to be. So,
So they'll be driving off the asphalt, I mean, on just gravel and then into their site.
No, I believe the whole thing was, I mean, it should be all asphalt to get
Okay.
to their site for their construction. Yeah, but then it stops, and eventually we'll have the parks, FDP is coming in. So you guys already saw it. You guys already approved everything, and then we split it out to approve just the creek plan. And you guys saw that piece, and the board saw that piece, and that's all the board was willing to approve at the time was the creek work. And the creek work was really done separately in order to get all the federal and state permitting started, which started in January. But The remainder of that application, which you guys already approved, is going back to the board for their approval on the 28th. So it hasn't changed at all, other than it now doesn't have that creek work, which we already approved. But it's the same design, and that'll come forward, and that kind of encompasses that, but I don't, right now, that bridge, so the bridge construction and the financing of the bridge isn't a part of that. So the Marshall Road effectively will be platted in that area through this, and I think it was already done actually through the plat that we processed for the Element Hotel. But that roadway is platted, and the rest of the design would be approved for Parks 1 and 2, or is going to be considered for approval for Parks 1 and 2. And I think everyone, I mean, I don't know if that you actually got to see it, because I'm not sure you were there for that, but you guys unanimously approved it, and everyone's very excited about it. It's a pretty great design.
So the full plan that we approved is being resubmitted,
Yeah,
resubmitted to the
it's
board?
going back to the
It's not
board,
just a
so-
partial? That's great.
Yeah, so, but the bridge financing piece of that, so there is no bridge yet. The bridge will have to come back as a separate item to be constructed when it's just a costly piece, so. But they, I mean, and really like in all intents and purposes, the creek work will get permitted at some point in the next, hopefully 12 months or something like that, and the work will start probably out in, because you can't work within the floodway until those permits are done. But some of the grading can get started, but they'll all kind of sequence up, and by the time the whole project is probably constructed in 2 or 3 years from now, then hopefully we identify the financing for the bridge, and the bridge is built at the same time. I think these things can all sequence and catch up to each other. It's just, you want to get work on the ground, you got to get the outside of that park approved as well. And the good thing about the whole thing is that, as you saw originally, it was planned holistically. So there's a design that integrates the whole thing. It's not like we have to piece this together. It's almost just as difficult of an exercise to separate it out. So.
What about the main, so coming off of the new roundabout, the main road going in, when is that going to be finished, do you know?
That's a good question.
Not in time for the run, I am sounding like.
No, my understanding is September, towards the end of September. But I don't know that I don't know. I mean, I think that there's pieces of that, from what I understand, that, like the street lighting, or, the pavers are what have to be made, like they're permeable pavers that allow the water to go through. So I think that's what's delaying, my understanding, what's delaying the construction of it right now, or what's extending the construction of it, because they're still working on it. They're just, you go out there and they've excavated to do all the subsurface work for the parking stalls, and then they have to, it's a difficult construction, I think, in order to get that permeability to work and the drainage to work underneath. And so you don't want to approve it when you have these 3 foot,
Right.
4 foot drop offs. But once those parking places are in, I think it'll be up and accessible. And then widening may follow a little bit later. But my understanding is towards the end of September. But I know the board was shooting for the end of this month in order for that run. So, but I don't think that's what's happening.
And why isn't, if you're coming down McCaslin north, why isn't it open to, it would just be a U-turn, I get it, but why isn't that open? Why is that all coned off, so you can't
The left turn?
circle around?
Or-
Yeah,
coming
so
down
if
either,
you're heading
the
north,
circle
you
around
just-
to the left, yeah. It would just be going, but it would be a turnaround.
Oh, that's a good question.
But why is
I
that
don't know.
coned off? It just feels uncomfortable, not that anybody needs to use it, but it just makes it feel like there's more construction there than there needs to be.
Right, no, that part is built.
Yeah,
I don't know
that
why you
seems-
can't do a
that seems
360
odd.
around it.
Yeah.
You could-
Because I guess the only place you're going to go is right back to where you were, right?
Well, you would,
Yeah.
but still, having a bunch of cones there
Yeah.
seems to make it, it could be done, it could be finished, but it's not, because there's a bunch
It
of cones
slows
there.
people down,
Yeah, well.
leaving the cones there.
That thing's pretty
It does.
intimidating when you come up to it.
Yeah.
It slows me down.
Or the cops at the bottom with the two of them, we're out there this weekend, 2 guys out there radaring
Yeah.
everyone coming down the road.
Now, you just need to do that in Indiana after we narrow the roads.
Yep.
And we'll take care of that problem.
Yeah?
How many,
So I did, to follow up on the main road going in, I happened to be in the sports stable, and I was talking to a lady, and I don't know if she's the general manager, and I believe she may have talked to you also, Anthony, is They were saying that there's difficulty in people when they're putting in Google Maps and trying to get to the sports stable, that the roads aren't listed, so people are coming in Marshall and just getting trapped in there. And they said that it had to do something with, the county needs to receive information from the town to be able to get it listed or something, and then Google will come out and do the,
Huh.
I don't know. It was,
I can
it was
follow
very
up with
interesting.
the
Did
county,
you, did
but,
you get a comment from that?
That was my understanding as well, is that if you drop a pin, it drops you at Superior Liquor and not
Yeah.
at the sports stable, because that's not an official road yet. And until we say it's an official
It's a platted road. Superior Drive is certainly a platted road. So is Main Street. So,
Yeah, so there's some disconnect. She was saying that she's
but
contacted.
the temporary road, access road, certainly isn't. So, I mean, that may be a confusion for people because those roads, are platted but not open. So I don't know what Google does in order to get you access to someplace. But I did
Waze.
notice the other day on it that Styx is kind of shown in our pond over here, like
Yeah.
the Styx coffee shop.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Any
So I
Waze
think
map
they-
editors?
And they actually, when mapping, have to drive on the road. It's something related to that, I
Yeah.
thought, so.
Yeah, that might be the disconnect too. So if they're going to come over here and drive on our temporary road, which isn't platted, then the two things don't.
Right.
But hopefully it's something that gets all corrected once Main Street's actually open and you can get there via a platted road. But
Yeah.
I'm happy to follow up with I know some folks at the assessor, so the county assessor in their GIS department. We can figure out whether or not there's something we can do to make it work better. But I have not, I mean, I wish I had heard from them directly. But,
Yeah.
but it's good to hear.
And
regardless.
unfortunately, I
So-
think it was in June when she talked to me about it, and I know that you had talked to her before that because she mentioned that she had talked to you about it, so, yeah.
Oh,
I just thought of it when we were
No,
sitting here, so.
it's good.
How many residential permits have been pulled to go in? I know they're coming up fast.
It's a good, I don't know, honestly. We have approved, 117 as far as the FTP goes, and I think that,
So they can just pull permits
Not-
right through that.
yeah, but not, I'd say 35% of them have probably
Okay.
been pulled, but, yeah, I don't think that the construction, I don't think anything's been pulled on the west side of Promenade, and I don't think anything's really been pulled south of so there's two courtyard phases, like, and there a main, kind of a central alley that runs east-west within block 13, and everything north of that, I think, has been pulled, and nothing
Okay.
south of that's been pulled, from my understanding, but,
Cool.
but I don't always see,
Yeah.
and those are already approved, so there's
They're
no
going
real
fast.
review for.
Yeah, I was curious how, I mean,
Yeah.
I assume they're selling them, so that's why they're building.
They are.
Yeah. So, not going to be able to get there, but
Soon, very soon.
soon. No, all right.
All right.
Anything else?
Let's do it.
We good?
Should do it for me.
Okay.
Adjourned.